Welcome to Journey to Queendom, the sacred space where survival ends and sovereignty begins. I'm your host, Marci J. Duncan, and this is where we lay down the cape of overachievement, code switching, and self doubt, and we pick up the crown of softness, wholeness, and authenticity. Okay, you brave souls, thank you for tuning in for part two. And now I'm going to get into part two, which is Dissonance, the play that healed me. Now, let me tell you about this gift that God gave me in order to help me heal from some of the trauma and mindsets and coping mechanisms that I had adopted from trauma in my past and from existing in survival mode for most of my life. And what I was realizing is that I knew that these things were in me, but I didn't know how to change. I didn't know how to heal. I didn't know how to do better. It just felt outside of me. And I prayed and asked God, please help me. Please help me. I can't do this. I want to change, and I'll do anything you tell me to do, even if it hurts, sacrifice, whatever. I'm going to do it because I want to be a good wife. I want to be a good human being. I want to be authentic. I want to be myself. I want to be free. I want to be a good mom. I want to be a good friend. I want to be free. And God gave me a gift. So it was 2020 during the time of George Floyd, and we've talked about that and what it's done for me. And I was very much in that space at that time. And I was doing a show in Destin, Florida. I was doing a show at Emerald Coast Theater Company. It was called Florida Girls. And after the show, I realized that one of my friends had come to see the show because she came up to me and she asked me if she could talk. She said, "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So we kind of went off to the side, and she asked me, "How are you doing?" And I knew exactly what she was asking me, right? This was during the time of George Floyd. You know, the world was in social upheaval. You know, there was so much racial tension happening. So when she asked me how I was doing, I knew what she meant. She was offering care for me during this difficult time of trying to understand racial tension at this time. And I was so moved by that this white woman came up to me and asked me how I was doing. And furthermore, she said, "I'm interested to know the conversations you are having with your son versus the conversations I'm having with my son," because we had sons of the same age. And she said, "I think we should write a play about it." And that immediately registered in my spirit. Like, I can't even explain to you. It was like I immediately knew that this is what I wanted to do. I said yes. So we agreed to start meeting over Zoom because, of course, this was, during COVID and lockdown and all this stuff. So we agreed to start meeting over Zoom, and we opened up a Google Doc so that we can keep track of everything that we were discussing and all of the questions that we had and ideas for how we were going to outline the play. And we eventually thought this play was going to be about, a Black mother and a white mother having a conversation, about our sons in this climate of George Floyd. That's what we thought that this play was going to be. But as we started to have conversation and to outline some of the ideas that we had, I began to realize that I had a lot of stories on the inside of me that needed to come out. And the first story that I wrote was based on a real circumstance in my life where my son was driving home after, school, one of the breaks or spring break or something like that. He was driving back home to Tallahassee, and his car broke down. And so he pulled over into this city called Bonifay, Florida. And Bonifay, Florida is a sketch town for Black people, right, at this time. And so I was freaking out. He was 200, 300 miles away from me, and I couldn't get to him. And I was literally freaking out. So I wrote this experience on what it felt like to have your Black son in this situation, and you cannot support him, you can't be with him, you can't help him. And you actually hear a situation that happens where he is called the N-word for the first time. Y'all. So I wrote out this story, and that was the first story I wrote out, and I shared it. And of course, that story just opened up the well of conversation that we were going to have. And so, guys, what we eventually started to do is we started to write from our perspectives, a Black woman and a white woman having conversation, a difficult conversation about race. That's what we landed on. And in order for us to write this play, that meant that we really had to go there, that we really had to have a conversation about race. Now, let me preface this. I don't know what made me say yes to Kerry. That's my girl's name, Kerry Sandell. Hey, boo. I don't know what made me say yes, but I knew that it was what I needed to do. And the reason why I say I don't know why I said yes, because there were other people, there were other white women who wanted to collaborate with me on a project. And I said, hell to the no. Why? Because all of the conversations, difficult conversations that I have tried to have with white women have all ended badly. They've all ended badly where, I'm met with tears and crying, and I'm comforting them because they're just so shaken by the conversation we're having. And I couldn't deal with that. And I'm like, I don't want to do it. And my relationships with white women previous to this it was like I didn't trust them. Because oftentimes I would feel that they felt that they needed to help me, that they needed to guide me and lead me, that I just couldn't do it by myself. And it was not because I presented as some weak persona, because we've talked about that. But it was just that dynamic I've always felt with white women, that they felt like they were better than me, and they needed to let me know that. But they weren't doing it consciously. It was a subconscious vibe that I always felt. And that could be from my insecurities, what have you, but I know what I felt. So I said yes to Kerry. And I knew that we were going to have these difficult conversations. And I'm like, God, now, I like Kerry. I think she's a good person. I really do. I don't want to sabotage the play that we're writing and our friendship by being totally honest and having this conversation, because I might hurt her feelings. And to be quite honest with you, I was afraid. of hurting her feelings. But that's not what happened, friends. That's not what happened. I think because we were working over Zoom and we were not face to face, it provided a level of distance so that we could hear one another, think about our response before we said it. and also take some time to gather our true, authentic thoughts about said topic. Yeah. And so we were able to chew on the answer for a second so that it wasn't rash, it wasn't defensive, it wasn't hurtful. And what we also did was both of us are women of faith. We're both believers. And so we did have that in common, which was important for us, because it meant that we believed that we had to lead in love. And we both agreed to lead in love. And I agreed to be honest with her, and she agreed to be honest with me. I also agreed not to walk away or run away, but to see this creative project through. And so did she. And I also articulated that there could be no tears. Y'all forgive me, my sisters. I just could not deal with tears because they have been used against me so many times. And that was an immediate shutdown for me. And my girlfriend, Kerry, said, I am not fragile. I can have this conversation. I'm here 10 toes down. You know, I love you. I'm going to lead in love. And I know that I'm going to say some stuff that might hurt your feelings. You're going to say some stuff that's going to hurt my feelings. But at the end of the day, I know you love me and and I love you. And that's what we got to keep coming back to. We have to forgive each other quickly. Now, all of this stuff, guys, that we were establishing, I know for a fact that God was orchestrating. Because if you've listened to my episodes, this podcast, you know that this is not the way in which I walk through life. Trusting, being honest, transparent. This is not the way that I walk through life. But it was something about this creative expression, this work that we were working on together, that opened me up in a way that nothing else did. And what I started to realize is that art, for me, is where I can heal. Art, for me, is where I can tell the truth. Art, for me, is where I can be honest and I can be authentic and I can be creative. This is where I can get it. It just started to make sense to me. And the further and further and further we got in this project, and I was still in therapy at this time, and my therapist was helping me kind of navigate these conversations as I was having them with Kerry and myself, because I was mostly having conversations with myself about belief systems and, you know, as it relates to race between black and white women. And what I realized is that Kerry and I, as we were working through this process, we were very mindful of each other. We were very careful, but we were honest. We did not sugarcoat. We did not hold back our thoughts and opinions. And I have to say, and I'm going to get emotional, but I have to say that God answered my prayer in the most unlikely way. I would have never guessed it would be this white woman and the art that we created together. I would have never guessed is that this piece of work that we were working on together would be the catalyst to years of mistrust and hiding and fear and self-doubt and feeling unworthy and not chosen. That this was the catalyst to free me. God used the very gift that He Himself gave me as a catalyst to heal me. And when I think about that, I think about how much God must love me, how precious I must be to Him. And I realized that God was there with me in those traumatic moments. He was sitting beside me. He was holding me. He was breathing with me. He was comforting me. And He was assuring me that I am His. No matter what I faced, no matter what trauma I experienced, I belonged to Him. And I was His precious gem. And I can't tell you how much freedom exists in this new revelation. This play that Kerry and I started to work on together has now grown, and we are on tour with that play. 3 years down the line, we are on tour with that play. We have been to Washington, California. We've been all across the Panhandle. We've been to Connecticut, and the journey continues. This play taught me that I can trust, that I can be honest with my feelings, that I don't have to be anything other than who I am, that I don't have to hide, that I don't have to walk around in perpetual shame from those secrets that tried to convince me that I was dirt, that I wasn't worthy, that I should be ashamed. This experience, this creative experience, gave me hope. It showed me that I could write, because I never knew that I could write. It gave me the gift of writing. And I realized that even when I was a little girl, I used to write these books, these stories, and I would staple the notebook paper together and draw a cover on the book. And I would pretend that I was writing these novels. And God brought that back up to me. Things that I had forgotten because shame and devastation and those wounds from the past pushed all of that aside. And God used that very thing to bring me out. So, friends, I pose to you today, what are those desires that you had as a little child that were so sacred to you? What are they? That's your journal prompt. What were the yearnings of your little heart as a little one? What did you want for the future? What did you see for the future? Write it down, make it plain, reassociate yourself with that. Maybe that's your freedom too. Thank you guys for this episode. It's been an amazing journey to just share in this way with you. And I hope that you can connect with some of the lessons that I've learned. There's still so many more lessons that I want to share with you. So stay tuned for our next episode. I decided to put in an excerpt of the play that healed me. I just want to give an intro to this. This play is about a Black woman and a white woman who have been friends for 20 years. They're best friends, but they've never had an honest conversation about race. And so this play asks the question, can a Black woman and a white woman who've been friends for 20 years have an honest conversation about race and their friendship survive? So this is towards the end of the play. It gets to the crux of the argument as they are attempting to have this honest conversation. And Lauren, who is the white woman, has just said to Angela, the Black woman, the role that I play, she has just said that Brian, Angela's brother, has approached her and they've been dating. So that means that Lauren, this white woman, has been dating my brother. And Lauren and I are best friends, and I didn't know this. So we've been talking about it and talking about it and talking about it, and we are at the height of our argument. And Angela has been refraining from telling the absolute truth up until now.
You can't have an honest conversation without making yourself the victim. I mean, you have to find some way to excuse yourself from responsibility. You want to make it seem like it's my fault, but you are the one that is consistently overlooking your own insensitivity.
What the hell do you want me to do?
I want you to have enough sense to know that Brian is off limits.
That is not your decision to make. I am so sorry that I'm white and that offends you so much, and I can only name 3 shampoos and I can't crack the sacred circle of the Black sisterhood. But Brian chose me.
It's funny that you think that. Because the same system that has him programmed to want you is the same system that keeps you ignorant to the real reason why. The truth that Black and white women never talk about. But since you want to crack the code to the Black sisterhood, let me put you on game, sis. Black women were the maids, the master's whore, the nursemaid to the white women's babies. And at that same time, taking care of their own families, supporting their own husbands, and taking care of their own homes. And in that system, Black women were at the bottom. Nobody made them a priority. Now, who can survive that type of systematic messaging unscathed? White women can. Because white women have always been presented as the object of every man's desire. Systematically designed and unchallenged. So yeah, it annoys me that you still think that this conversation is about Lauren being engaged to Brian. It's so much bigger than that. But instead of looking at the ugly truth, you want to sit up in here and tell me what you deserve, what you want. Frankly, I am tired of hearing what white women want. I am tired of hearing what white women want. Ask the Black woman what she wants.
Yo, that was the hardest monologue for me to write because it was the absolute truth of how I felt at that time. My director sent me home 3 times because every time I would bring him a version, he would say, "You're not telling the truth. Nope, you're not telling the truth. Nope, you're not telling the truth." And over tears hitting the page of me writing the absolute ugly, nasty truth of what I felt, that monologue was birthed. Now, if you want to explore and know this story between Angela and Lauren, go ahead and visit our Dissonance the Play page at www.dissonanceplay.com. And we are Dissonance Play on all social media as well. It'll be in the show notes for you to go and see where we are. Maybe you can come and check us out and see a show. Thank you for walking this stretch of the journey with me. If something in today's episode stirred your spirit, share this episode with a sister. Leave a review or connect with me on social media. Remember, your softness is sacred. Your healing is your birthright. And your queendom, it's already within you. Until next time, keep rising and claim your inheritance. This podcast was brought to you by Artists at Play, nurturing the artist within.